Imagine waking up to the stench of smoke, only to find your beloved boat burning to ashes in your own garage. I'm Grant Peterson, and that's the nightmare I lived through, all thanks to Belinda Wrightmore, the HOA president with frizzy hair like a bird's nest, garish floral blouses, and a fake smile that screams trouble. She torched my boat to scare me into submission, thinking I'd pack up and leave. Big mistake, Belinda. She didn't know I could dismantle her entire HOA board with just a secret truth. This story is packed with juicy drama, cunning mind games, and a jaw-dropping payoff that'll leave you cheering. Drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from, and buckle up for the wildest revenge tale you'll ever hear. Trust me, it's about to get explosive. The morning I found my father's antique sailboat reduced to charred remains, something inside me changed forever. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Grant Peterson, a marine ecosystem researcher who moved to Sunshine Acres 6 months ago with my 10-year-old daughter Lucy. After losing my wife to cancer 2 years earlier, the pristine lake community seemed perfect for healing, both emotionally and professionally. My university had granted funding to study the lake's unique ecosystem, making this location ideal. We're going to be okay here, I told Lucy as we watched sunset ripple across the water on moving day. Her sad eyes had brightened momentarily, the first glimpse of my old daughter I'd seen in months. The crown jewel of our new life was my father's antique wooden sailboat, a family heirloom that had weathered 3 generations of Petersons. More than just a vessel, it served triple duty, a bridge to my father's memory, a floating laboratory for my research, and most importantly, therapy space where Lucy and I processed our grief while collecting water samples. Dad, I found 3 new types of algae today, Lucy would exclaim, her face animated as she cataloged specimens in her junior science notebook. These precious moments made our house feel like home again. What I couldn't have known was how meticulously Belinda Wrightmore had engineered Sunshine Acres' appearance of tranquility. As HOA president, she maintained a facade of community caretaker while manipulating regulations to serve her hidden agenda. With her perpetual designer sunglasses regardless of weather, frantically highlighted hair, and chaotic yet somehow coordinated outfits, Belinda was difficult to miss. But it was her leather-bound violation journal, which she stroked almost lovingly during meetings, that unsettled residents most. Inside were documented infractions, with photographs, dates, and detailed notes that she'd reference with disturbing precision. Section 14, paragraph 3, she'd announce without opening it, as if HOA bylaws were scripture she'd memorized. My first encounter with Belinda's true nature came during the monthly HOA meeting. I attended purely out of civic duty, unprepared for what unfolded. Belinda stood at the podium, clicking through a PowerPoint presentation titled Aesthetic Standards for Watercraft. As we all know, she began, her voice carrying that unmistakable tone of someone who believes their opinion is universal truth. Sunshine Acres prides itself on visual excellence. Recently, some unconventional vessels have appeared on our beautiful lake. Her gaze locked onto me for a calculated moment as photos of my boat appeared on screen, from angles indicating she'd been photographing it without permission. The implication was clear. My vintage wooden boat was the eyesore in question. When discussion opened, I approached the microphone. My boat has all required permits and safety certifications, I explained calmly. It also serves educational purposes for my university research and my daughter's science projects. Several homeowners nodded supportively. Mrs. Abernathy, who'd welcomed us with homemade cookies, spoke up. That boat is charming. It adds character to our lake. To Belinda's visible frustration, her proposal failed to secure enough votes. As everyone dispersed, I caught her watching me, one manicured finger tapping rhythmically against her orange bracelet. The look wasn't mere disappointment. It was calculation. That evening, while organizing research equipment on my back porch, I heard the unmistakable click of a camera shutter. Turning toward the sound, I spotted Belinda by the shoreline photographing my boat. "Can I help you with something?" I called, approaching her. Rather than showing embarrassment at being caught, she straightened defiantly. "Your boat is disrupting community aesthetics, Mr. Peterson," she said coolly. "I'm simply documenting violations." Something in her tone raised the hair on my neck. Violations of what? The boat was approved before we moved in, I countered. Her smile never reached her eyes. "Rules can change, Mr. Peterson," she replied with unsettling confidence, "and I am the one who changes them." As she walked away, orange scarf fluttering behind her, I dismissed the encounter as petty HOA politics. I couldn't have known this was merely the opening move in Belinda's elaborate game, one where she'd already planned her next devastating action. And it wouldn't involve just a camera, but something far more destructive: fire. The routine Lucy and I established brought stability back to our fractured lives. Weekend mornings were sacred. We'd rise with the sun, pack our collection equipment, and set out onto the misty lake. Teaching her the sailing techniques my father taught me created a bridge between generations. "Feel how the wind changes direction here," I'd explain, guiding her small hands on the tiller. "That's because of the surrounding hills." For Lucy, the boat became a floating science lab where research transcended academics. "Dad, if I collect enough water samples through all 4 seasons, I might win the state science fair," she announced one evening, meticulously labeling specimen jars. Her renewed enthusiasm felt like watching flowers bloom in a garden I'd feared was permanently barren. My professional work benefited equally from our lakeside home. The university had specifically funded my research because Sunshine Lake contained several microorganisms rarely found in such pristine condition. My preliminary findings suggested potential applications for water purification technology, promising enough that colleagues had begun collaborating with me on what could become breakthrough research. This perfect alignment of personal healing and professional purpose made our new home seem heaven-sent, until Belinda's first strike arrived via email. What made the lake particularly valuable from a scientific perspective was its isolation from agricultural runoff and industrial contaminants that plagued most waterways. The unique microbial balance suggested natural filtration capabilities that could revolutionize water treatment processes. "It's like finding a living laboratory that's been perfectly preserved," my colleague Dr. Ramirez had commented during his visit. "Most ecosystems this pristine are in remote wilderness areas, not suburban communities." I'd often sit on the dock after Lucy went to bed, watching moonlight ripple across the water's surface, marveling at how something so beautiful could also hold solutions to critical environmental challenges. The lake wasn't just scenery, it was potentially helping solve global, clean water shortages. The message from the HOA cited multiple safety concerns regarding your watercraft and associated equipment. Allegedly, several residents had reported potentially dangerous research materials visible on my boat. The claims were absurd. My equipment consisted of basic collection tools, sample bottles, a plankton net, and standard water testing kits. Nothing remotely hazardous. The email concluded with a warning that continued violations may result in revocation of lake access privileges. It was clearly intimidation, but why target me specifically? Partial answers came unexpectedly at the local market while selecting vegetables. "You're the boat guy, right?" asked an elderly man I recognized from community meetings. "Hank Donnelly," he introduced himself. "Former HOA board member until Belinda orchestrated my removal." His eyes darted around before continuing quietly, "Watch yourself with her. She doesn't just want to control aesthetics. She's working with developers, has plans for that lake that don't include residents having their own boats." When I pressed for details, Hank revealed that Belinda had connections with Aquavista Developments, a company planning to build an exclusive members-only boating club that would effectively privatize much of our community lake. "She gets a hefty consulting fee if their proposal goes through," he explained. "Your research boat complicates their narrative about needing to improve the lake." I spent that night researching Aquavista, discovering their troubling history of environmental shortcuts in other communities. Their developments typically promised luxury and exclusivity while quietly securing control of public water resources. The implications disturbed me enough that I barely slept. By dawn, I'd decided to begin documenting water quality more comprehensively to establish baseline data in case environmental challenges became necessary. I planned to take extra samples that morning, but never got the chance. At 5:27 a.m., my phone rang. "Grant," shouted my neighbor Theodore, panic evident in his voice. "Your boat's on fire. Get down to the dock now." I bolted awake, confusion giving way to horror as his words registered. Throwing on clothes, I sprinted downstairs and out the back door. The scene unfolding in the soft dawn light was devastating. Flames engulfing my father's boat, orange fire reflecting off the calm water in a hellish mirror. Fire trucks wailed in the distance, but I knew immediately they had arrived too late. By the time firefighters extinguished the blaze, all that remained was a blackened skeleton of the vessel that had connected 3 generations of my family. Lucy appeared beside me, still in pajamas, her small hand slipping into mine. "Dad?" she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Is that our boat?" I nodded, unable to form words, as firefighters waded through knee-deep water around the smoldering remains. "But my science project, all our samples? How will we go on the lake now?" Each question felt like another stab wound. The police arrived shortly after, taking perfunctory statements. "No obvious cause," the officer concluded after a brief inspection. "Could have been electrical, could have been accidental, hard to determine with older wooden boats." But I knew better. This was no accident. It was a message. As I comforted Lucy, something caught my eye near the shoreline. A small piece of bright orange fabric snagged on a bush. The distinctive shade matched Belinda's ever-present scarf and bracelet. I carefully retrieved it while no one was looking, a cold certainty forming in my gut. This wasn't random vandalism or accident. It was targeted destruction. The following days brought crushing grief unlike anything since my wife's passing. Lucy withdrew completely, abandoning her science project and barely speaking during meals. I fluctuated between devastating sadness and simmering rage. The boat hadn't been merely transportation, or even just a family heirloom. It had been our healing space, our connection to both past and future. As Lucy finally fell asleep one night after hours of silent tears, I sat at my desk with a newfound clarity and determination. If Belinda Wrightmore wanted to play with fire, she'd discover I wasn't as easily intimidated as she might have hoped. As a scientist, I knew how to research methodically, gather evidence, and build an airtight case. I spent the entire night investigating HOA regulations, property laws, and the legal boundaries of homeowners associations. By dawn, I understood my rights and the path forward. Belinda had burned my boats, but in doing so, she'd ignited something far more dangerous, my resolution to fight back. The charred remains of my boat were hauled away, leaving an empty space at the dock that felt symbolic of the void in our lives. While Lucy struggled with recurring nightmares, I channeled my anger into methodical investigation. The official police report listed the cause as undetermined, but I knew better. The fragment of orange fabric I'd found near the scene matched Belinda's distinctive accessories. Not conclusive evidence alone, but certainly suspicious. My first step was checking for security cameras that might have captured something incriminating. Surprisingly, the community cameras covered the clubhouse and gates, but conspicuously missed the docks. This omission seemed deliberate. Why would a security-obsessed HOA neglect surveillance of valuable watercraft, unless someone wanted that area undocumented? My investigation gained unexpected momentum when Dr. Amara Wong appeared at my door one evening. I recognized her as the environmental attorney from the contemporary house at the end of our street, but we'd never spoken directly. "I heard about your boat," she said without preamble, "and I don't believe for a second it was an accident." Over coffee at my kitchen table, Amara revealed her own history with Belinda. "Last year, I opposed the HOA's use of toxic herbicides around the lake. The chemicals threaten the ecosystem and potentially residents' health. Coincidentally, they were supplied by Belinda's husband's company." Her eyes narrowed. "When I presented scientific evidence against the herbicides, Belinda threatened to file complaints about my home office violations unless I reconsidered my position. Classic intimidation tactics. As our conversation deepened, Amara agreed to help me gather information and build a case. "What happened to your boat wasn't isolated. It's part of a systematic abuse of power, and we can prove it." With Amara's guidance, we began quietly contacting other residents who had experienced Belinda's vindictiveness. A troubling pattern emerged: selective enforcement of rules, mysterious property damage for vocal opponents, and sudden fee increases targeted at specific homeowners. Our breakthrough came when Theo Wheeler, a security system technician who'd recently moved to Sunshine Acres, offered his expertise. "My home cameras catch a slice of the lakefront," he explained, showing me his sophisticated system. "I installed them after Belinda tried finding me for my satellite dish, which is federally protected, by the way." Theo's footage from the morning of the fire showed a figure moving toward the docks around 4:30 a.m., carrying what appeared to be a container. While the face wasn't clearly visible, the distinctive silhouette and flowing orange scarf were unmistakable. The confrontation at the community pool became our turning point. Lucy had cautiously returned to collecting water samples, this time from shore using extended equipment, when Belinda spotted us. "I wouldn't trust any water data from the Peterson family," she announced loudly to nearby residents. "Their research methods are questionable." When I objected, she deliberately knocked over Lucy's carefully arranged sample tray, sending weeks of collections scattering across concrete. "Oops," she said with a cold smile. "Environmental hazard." As neighbors awkwardly looked away rather than intervene, something hardened inside me. This wasn't just about my boat anymore. It was about stopping someone who took pleasure in cruelty, especially toward a child still processing profound grief. Armed with preliminary evidence, I filed a formal complaint with the HOA board requesting investigation into the boat fire. Belinda's response was swift and calculated. She called an emergency HOA meeting where she unveiled her counter-narrative. After consulting with experts, she announced with practiced concern, "We've determined the likely cause of Mr. Peterson's unfortunate boat fire was his own research equipment." She presented a fabricated investigation report claiming my ecological testing tools had caused a chemical reaction. When I challenged this absurdity, pointing out that my equipment consisted mainly of manual sampling tools, Belinda smiled coldly. Well, perhaps it was simply negligence in boat maintenance. Either way, she added, addressing the crowd, this incident clearly demonstrates the need for our proposed temporary ban on all personal watercraft until proper safety regulations can be established. The board voted 4-1 in favor of the ban, exactly what Belinda had wanted all along. Later that week, Hank pulled me aside after I'd dropped Lucy at her school bus stop. Belinda worked for development companies before her real estate career failed, he confided, still maintains those connections. With Amara's legal expertise, we dug into Belinda's professional background and uncovered the missing puzzle piece. County records showed preliminary permit applications for a private marina development on our lake, with Belinda Wrightmore listed as the local consultant. More damning was discovering that her consulting fee would be nearly $200,000 if the project received approval. Explaining her desperate need to eliminate obstacles like my research boat, which might document environmental impacts that could derail the development. On the night before our crucial HOA meeting, I discovered Lucy's research journal missing, containing irreplaceable data we needed. My security camera showed Belinda herself entering our yard through the side gate at midnight. Confronting her meant risking everything. She could claim harassment and potentially turn the community against us at the worst possible moment. But losing that evidence might doom our case. As I stood at her doorstep at 6 a.m., heart pounding, I knew this confrontation would determine whether justice prevailed or Belinda's reign continued unchallenged. When she opened the door in her bathrobe, surprise quickly transformed to calculated composure. "Mr. Peterson, this is highly inappropriate," she began, but I cut her off. "Return my daughter's research journal now, or the police will be here with a warrant in 30 minutes. Her eyes widened almost imperceptibly. "I have no idea what you're talking about," she replied, but her gaze flickered toward her hallway closet. "That's interesting," I said, holding up my phone, "because my security camera shows you entering our yard at 12:17 a.m. The police will find that compelling." After a tense silence, she retrieved the journal from her closet. "I found this blowing around the neighborhood," she claimed weakly. "I was planning to return it today." As I took Lucy's journal, I locked eyes with her. "This ends now, Belinda, one way or another." Amara and I spent evenings poring through dense HOA legal documents, highlighting passages and making notes. Most homeowners never bothered reading these bylaws, but Amara's legal training helped us uncover crucial information buried within the legalese. "Look at this," she said one night, pointing to Section 23 of the Covenant. "Board members must disclose any potential conflicts of interest, especially regarding financial relationships with contractors or developers." Another clause stated that any board member involved in property destruction within the community would face immediate suspension pending investigation. Most importantly, we discovered that major decisions regarding community facilities, particularly the lake, required 75% approval from all residents, not just the board. "Belinda's been making decisions with just board votes," Amara noted. "That's a direct violation of the bylaws." The most surprising discovery came buried in an environmental addendum. In cases of environmental emergency or concern, decisions must be reviewed by an independent expert. As an environmental researcher with university credentials, I was technically qualified to challenge development proposals on ecological grounds. What truly surprised us was discovering how the original founders of Sunshine Acres had built extraordinary environmental protections into the Old community newsletters revealed that the lake had once suffered a contamination event 20 years ago, after which residents had rallied to create some of the strongest water protection provisions I'd ever seen in a residential document. "These founders were visionaries," Amara said, showing me yellowed photos of community members creating shoreline protection zones. They understood the lake's value beyond property values. This hidden history explained why many older residents responded positively to our growing petition. Belinda wasn't just violating rules, she was betraying the community's founding principles. As I sat alone that night reviewing these documents, conflicting emotions washed over me. Initially, I'd wanted simple justice for my destroyed boat, a straightforward motivation. But now, I found myself becoming guardian of something greater. This responsibility both frightened and energized me. Scientists typically observe and document. We rarely confront. Each morning, doubt would momentarily paralyze me. Challenging someone as ruthless as Belinda seemed foolhardy. Yet each night, reviewing our mounting evidence, I'd feel quiet certainty solidifying. The empirical evidence was undeniable, the moral imperative clear. My scientific training was finally serving a purpose beyond academic publication. Perhaps this was precisely why I was here, not just as a researcher, but as someone who could translate environmental science into community action. Armed with our findings, we began documenting violations and gathering signatures from residents opposing Belinda's boat club plan. Many were hesitant initially, fearing retaliation, but the evidence of corruption proved persuasive. Teo continued enhancing the security footage, eventually isolating frames clearly showing Belinda's distinctive orange accessories as she approached the docks before the fire. Belinda, sensing growing resistance, escalated her countermeasures. I received violation notices for unauthorized research equipment in my yard, a transparent intimidation attempt. Lucy was excluded from community events, told Peterson family memberships were under review. Most disturbing, Belinda spread rumors that my research was contaminating the lake, causing previously friendly neighbors to become distant. Our unexpected breakthrough came at the local coffee shop when I encountered Marilyn Winters, Belinda's former assistant from her failed real estate career. After cautious conversation, Marilyn revealed Belinda always wore that bright orange bracelet when doing what she called her special assignments. It was her lucky charm whenever she had to handle situations personally. The description matched precisely what we'd seen in Theo's enhanced footage. When I relayed this to Amara, she immediately connected it to a crucial clause we'd highlighted. The board may be temporarily suspended in its entirety if evidence of serious criminal activity or abuse of power exists, provided 60% of homeowners sign a petition demanding such action. We had our strategy, but needed more signatures and irrefutable evidence of Belinda's wrongdoing. Our petition reached 45% of homeowners when I decided to force Belinda's hand. At the next board meeting, I formally requested she disclose her relationship with Aqua Vista Developments. According to Section 23 of our bylaws, I stated calmly while cameras recorded, board members must disclose any potential conflicts of interest. I'm requesting that President Wrightmore clarify her consulting relationship with the company proposing development on our lake. The room fell silent as Belinda's face flushed beneath her makeup. I have no idea what you're talking about, she snapped, but her eyes darted nervously. This is a baseless accusation meant to distract from safety issues your negligence caused. I remained calm, sliding copies of the county permit application across the table. Your signature appears on these preliminary documents as a consultant. Would you like to revise your statement? The meeting dissolved into chaos, with Belinda abruptly calling for adjournment. Lucy, who had been withdrawn for weeks, surprised me that evening by showing interest in my efforts. Dad, she asked as we reviewed data I'd collected by canoe since my boat was gone, do you think we'll win against Ms. Wrightmore? I paused, considering how to answer honestly without burdening her further. Science teaches us to follow evidence where it leads, I finally replied. And right now, the evidence suggests that what's happening isn't right and that there are rules to stop it. Lucy considered this, then nodded. My science teacher says a good researcher never gives up on finding the truth, and they always stand up for what the evidence shows. Her words touched something deep within me. The next morning, Hank arrived with an unexpected revelation. Did you know Belinda has a secret camera in the HOA office? He asked with a mischievous glint. And did you also know I was an electronics engineer before retirement? Looking at his expression, I understood immediately. Our investigation had reached a new level. Hank's expertise proved invaluable as he helped place a discreet recording device in the HOA office under the guise of checking the electrical system. Belinda's own paranoia works against her, he explained, positioning the small microphone. She's so concerned about monitoring others that she never considers someone might use her own tactics against her. With the recording device in place, we continued gathering signatures while waiting for Belinda to incriminate herself. Our petition had reached 45%, but we still needed another 15% to reach the 60% threshold required by the bylaws. The community remained divided, with many residents too intimidated to openly oppose the HOA president despite private misgivings. I drafted a formal letter requesting Belinda publicly disclose her relationship with Aqua Vista at the upcoming HOA meeting, citing relevant bylaw sections. Alongside this, I prepared a scientific report detailing the potential environmental impact of Aqua Vista's proposed development, complete with water quality analyses showing the lake's pristine condition. Lucy helped with simpler tests, her enthusiasm for science slowly returning. "Dad, look at the oxygen levels in this sample," she exclaimed one afternoon. "The lake is super healthy right now. We can't let them ruin it." Her passion reminded me why this fight mattered, not just for personal vindication, but for the entire ecosystem and community. What made our scientific case compelling was Sunshine Lake's unique biodiversity. My research had identified several rare freshwater microorganisms existing in a delicate balance found in few other ecosystems regionally. Dr. Eleanor Ruiz, my department chair, visited to confirm my findings and was astonished by the lake's ecological significance. "Grant, this isn't just a pretty body of water," she said, examining our latest samples. "This lake could be classified as a critical habitat under federal guidelines." Her assessment strengthened our position considerably. Aqua Vista's development potentially violated not just HOA bylaws, but federal environmental protections. When I shared these findings with Amara, she immediately recognized their legal value. "This changes everything," she said, eyes widening. "We're not just talking about HOA regulations anymore, but potential violations of the Clean Water Act." Belinda's retaliation escalated quickly. She proposed a special assessment fee for environmental non-compliance targeting households that opposed her, a transparent financial intimidation attempt. Next, she hired a fake environmental consultant to inspect my property, citing concerns about lake contamination from research activities. Most disturbing was when Lucy came home in tears because a classmate whose father sat on the HOA board had called her the pollution girl and said her father was ruining the neighborhood. Seeing my daughter hurt pushed me toward my breaking point, but Amara counseled patience. "We're close to having what we need," she insisted. "Don't give Belinda ammunition by losing your temper." The wisdom of her advice was confirmed when our recording device captured a damning conversation between Belinda and an Aqua Vista representative. "Don't worry. I've handled all obstacles." Belinda's voice came through clearly. "There are no more boats on the lake, especially that researcher's vessel." The Aqua Vista representative sounded pleased. "Good. Your consulting package will be processed once the project gets approval." "What about the environmental assessment?" Belinda's laugh was cold. "I've already arranged for someone cooperative to handle that report. And about the fire, no one can prove anything." I was very careful. Listening to the recording in Amara's living room, I felt a chill. Here was the confession we needed, explicitly connecting Belinda to both the boat fire and corruption surrounding the development project. Yet, we still needed more signatures before we could act. The recording contained another shocking revelation. The Aqua Vista representative mentioned that their company had recently acquired watershed properties upstream from our lake. "The Riverside County acquisitions are complete," he said. "Once we control both the upstream flow and lake access, we'll have complete leverage for the regional development plan." This explained why Aqua Vista was so determined to secure our lake. It was one piece of a massive water rights acquisition strategy, potentially affecting drinking water for multiple communities. This isn't just about a luxury boat club, Mara realized. They're orchestrating a water rights takeover that could give them enormous power over regional development for decades. What began as personal justice for my destroyed boat had evolved into protecting vital water resources for an entire region. My moment of doubt came that night, watching Lucy finally sleeping peacefully after weeks of nightmares. I could simply sell the house, move elsewhere, and continue my research in a less hostile environment. The fight was taking a toll on both of us. As if sensing my wavering resolve, Lucy woke briefly and looked up with sleepy eyes. "Dad," she murmured, "remember what you told me about scientists never giving up when they know something's true?" I nodded, smoothing her hair. "My teacher said if you see something wrong and don't try to fix it, you become part of the problem." Her simple wisdom cut through my doubt. "You're right, sweetie," I whispered. "We're not running away. This is our home, and we're going to protect it and the lake." Her smile as she drifted back to sleep strengthened my determination. We would see this through, not just for ourselves, but for the entire community. Our carefully laid plans were nearly derailed when Belinda, perhaps sensing walls closing in, called a sudden emergency HOA meeting for that evening. "We have evidence of sabotage by certain residents aimed at damaging our community," the email announcement read. Amara and I exchanged alarmed glances. "She's going to try to discredit us before we can act," Amara realized. "She'll likely present doctored evidence painting you as the troublemaker." We hastily contacted supporters, but with such short notice, weren't sure how many would attend. As we gathered in the community center, I felt the tension pervading the room. Belinda stood at the podium, looking unusually confident as she prepared a slideshow. "Tonight, I'll be presenting evidence of a concerning campaign to undermine Sunshine Acres' governance and reputation," she began, gaze fixed directly on me. Beside me, Amara squeezed my hand beneath the table. "It's time," she whispered, sliding a small USB drive toward me. "I have information on every board member. They all have secrets with Belinda. This is when we flip the script." Looking around at faces believing Belinda's words, I knew the moment had arrived for all cards to be laid on the table. Belinda's presentation began with altered photographs and misleading graphs, attempting to portray me and my supporters as environmental hazards rather than protectors. "As you can see," she said, gesturing to a doctored image of my backyard research equipment, "certain residents are conducting unauthorized experiments, threatening our lake's ecosystem." The audience murmured, some nodding while others looked skeptical. "We have reason to believe these activities are not merely negligent, but potentially deliberate attempts to interfere with legitimate community improvements." She was laying groundwork to paint opposition to the boat club as anti-community, perhaps even criminal, a masterful manipulation that might have worked if we hadn't been prepared. Thanks to Amara's investigation, we understood how Belinda maintained control over the board. Each member had been compromised or bribed. The vice president had been promised a management position in the Aqua Vista project. The treasurer had a financial indiscretion that Belinda had helped cover up. Other members enjoyed special privileges from HOA funds, including unauthorized landscaping and home repairs paid from community coffers. Amara had documented each instance meticulously, creating a comprehensive picture of corruption extending beyond just Belinda. Meanwhile, Theo had enhanced the security footage showing Belinda near my boat the morning of the fire, with her distinctive orange accessories clearly visible. As Belinda reached the climax of her presentation, directly accusing me of malicious interference with community advancement, I stood up. "Before we continue," I said calmly, "I'd like to share some audio and present scientific evidence relevant to this discussion." Belinda's face hardened. "This meeting has a fixed agenda, Mr. Peterson. Your time to speak hasn't been allocated." I smiled slightly. "Actually, according to HOA Bylaw Section 17, any resident may present evidence related to community welfare when serious allegations are being discussed. I believe accusing me of sabotage qualifies." Before she could object further, I connected the USB drive to the projector system and played the recording of her conversation with the Aqua Vista representative, her confession to the boat fire echoing clearly through the community center speakers. The room erupted in shocked exclamations as Belinda's face drained of color. This is illegal surveillance," she sputtered, composure cracking. "You cannot record private conversations," I stepped forward, maintaining calm. "Is that so? Then what about the secret camera you installed in the HOA office? Is that legal?" "We simply used your own surveillance system, Belinda." While she struggled to respond, I displayed the environmental impact report Lucy and my colleagues had prepared. "This scientific analysis shows conclusively that Aqua Vista's development would cause significant harm to our lake's ecosystem. But more importantly," I said, turning to face assembled residents directly, "we've gathered signatures from 60% of homeowners calling for suspension of the entire board under Bylaw Section 31, which permits such action when there's evidence of criminal activity and abuse of power." Amara stepped forward, her legal authority lending weight to my words. "As an attorney, I can confirm this petition is legally binding under our HOA covenant. The evidence of conflict of interest violations alone is substantial, but add property destruction, intimidation, and misappropriation of HOA funds." She gestured to documentation displayed on screen for all to see. Belinda made a desperate final attempt to regain control. "You can't do this! Who would run the HOA? This is about property values and community improvement." Her voice had risen to near shouting, carefully maintained image of composed authority completely shattered. Hank stood up from his seat in the back row. The bylaws provide for an interim board to be elected immediately in such circumstances, and as for property values, we prefer clean water and honest community to short-term profit. Then came the moment no one expected. The back doors opened and in walked Eleanor Ruiz, accompanied by two individuals in suits displaying EPA credentials. "I hope we're not interrupting," Eleanor said calmly. "When Grant shared your development plans, I felt obligated to alert federal authorities about potential Clean Water Act violations. These gentlemen would like to discuss Aquavista's watershed acquisitions with Miss Wrightmore." The room fell into stunned silence. Belinda's eyes darted frantically between the federal agents and the exit, calculating her options. "This is a private community meeting," she stammered. "You have no jurisdiction here." The taller agent stepped forward. "Actually, we have jurisdiction over all waterways connected to the national water system, which includes your lake. We'd like to discuss the undisclosed chemical testing Aquavista conducted last month, testing that appears nowhere in their environmental impact statements." I watched Belinda's facade crumble entirely as realization of defeat sank in. The composed, controlling HOA president was gone, replaced by a desperate woman seeing schemes collapse. "You don't understand," she cried, voice breaking. "I needed this project. I'm in debt. They promised to help me if I delivered the lake access." The room had fallen silent, witnessing the unraveling of someone who had terrorized their community for years. Lucy, sitting quietly beside me throughout, looked up with a mixture of awe and pride. "You did it, Dad," she whispered. "You're like a science hero from a movie." Her words touched me deeply. "We did it together," I told her, squeezing her hand. "Science and community working together." The vote to suspend the board was overwhelmingly approved, with even those who had been hesitant now raising hands in support. Hank was elected interim president, with Amara appointed as legal advisor. As the meeting concluded, I called the police to report the boat arson, playing the incriminating recording for responding officers. Watching Belinda being escorted to a police car for questioning, I felt not triumph, but relief. Relief that the community could begin healing, that the lake would be protected, and that justice, however delayed, had finally arrived. When Belinda passed me on her way out, she turned with a final venomous glare. "You think this is over?" she hissed. "Aquavista isn't an enemy you want to make. They'll still get this lake." I didn't realize then that her parting threat actually contained a crucial clue, one that would lead to an even greater victory than merely deposing her. A month after the dramatic HOA meeting, Sunshine Acres began feeling like the community it was meant to be. The newly elected board operated with transparency that residents found refreshing after years under Belinda's regime. I had connected with a skilled boat restorer to discuss salvaging what we could of my father's vessel, potentially transforming it into a dedicated research boat for ecosystem monitoring. Lucy's enthusiasm had returned full force as she worked on an expanded science project about the lake, with several schoolmates now eagerly participating. "Dad, can we invite Melissa and Jake this weekend to collect samples?" she asked one evening, excitement lighting her face in a way I hadn't seen since before the fire. "They want to help with the algae cataloging." These small moments of normalcy felt precious after all we'd been through. Despite our victory, we faced a continuing challenge. Representatives from Aquavista Developments persisted in pressuring the interim HOA board about their boat club project, now employing thinly veiled legal threats. They're claiming previously established rights and hinting at lawsuits for interference with business interests, Hank explained during a community update. The corporation clearly had resources beyond what our small community could match in a prolonged legal battle. This looming threat kept us vigilant, even as we tried rebuilding our sense of security. Amara spent countless hours researching precedents that might protect us, but the shadow of corporate power hung over our celebrations. The pivotal discovery came when Amara found a document buried in Belinda's HOA files, an environmental impact pre-assessment that Aquavista had commissioned but never made public. "Grant, you need to see this," she said, spreading papers across my dining table. According to this preliminary study, Aquavista's development would violate at least 3 federal environmental regulations. They knew their project could potentially contaminate groundwater systems connected to the city's drinking water supply. With renewed purpose, Hank and I investigated further, discovering that Aquavista had quietly influenced several other HOAs in the region to approve similar developments, resulting in documented water quality degradation that had been effectively covered up through legal settlements and non-disclosure agreements. We compiled our findings into a comprehensive report, including water quality analyses, projected environmental impacts, and documentation of Aquavista's pattern of regulatory violations. With Amara's guidance, I contacted Eliza Forrester, an investigative journalist specializing in environmental issues. This isn't just about one lake or one community, I explained during our first meeting. It's about a corporation systematically circumventing environmental protections across the region. Eliza reviewed our evidence with growing interest. This is exactly the kind of story that needs telling, she said finally. Corporate exploitation hidden behind community improvement while potentially endangering public water supplies? I'm in. Over the next few weeks, we worked closely with Eliza, providing additional documentation and connecting her with other communities affected by Aqua Vista's developments. When Eliza's exposé was published, the impact was immediate and far-reaching. Titled, "The Hidden Costs of Luxury: How Aqua Vista Developments Endangers Community Waterways." The feature-length article detailed the company's history of environmental shortcuts and regulatory manipulations. Environmental Protection Agency officials announced an investigation into Aqua Vista's practices within days of publication. Local officials, eager to distance themselves from the scandal, began reviewing all pending permits associated with the company. Aqua Vista's stock price plummeted as investors reacted to negative publicity and potential regulatory penalties. Within weeks, the company announced it was reconsidering all planned developments in our region, a corporate euphemism for complete withdrawal. For Belinda, the fallout was equally severe. Now facing multiple criminal charges, including property destruction, fraud, extortion, and conspiracy to violate environmental regulations, she had become a cautionary tale in HOA governance circles. Her case attracted national attention, with several news outlets doing follow-up pieces on HOA corruption and environmental exploitation. The publicity resulted in state legislators proposing new oversight mechanisms for homeowners associations and stricter environmental review requirements for lakefront developments. What had begun as one man's fight to avenge a burned boat had evolved into meaningful policy change that would protect communities and ecosystems throughout the region. The final irony came 6 months later when Belinda, now awaiting trial, applied for a job at, of all places, the Environmental Protection Agency. Her application might have succeeded too, if not for a familiar name on the hiring committee, Dr. Eleanor Ruiz. Some people never learn, Eleanor told me over coffee, sliding a copy of Belinda's rejection letter across the table. But sometimes the system actually works. As we watched Lucy lead a group of children on her newly established Lake Guardians tour aboard our restored boat, teaching them to collect and analyze water samples, I realized something profound. Belinda had accidentally created exactly what she'd fought against: a community united in environmental stewardship that would protect these waters for generations. Our community decided to use the settlement money from Aqua Vista to create a small ecological research and education center by the lake, open to all families and local schools. Though asked to serve as the center's scientific advisor, I declined any official HOA leadership position. "I'm just a researcher who wants to take his daughter boating," I explained at the planning meeting, earning understanding nods from neighbors, who now viewed me with respect rather than suspicion. Hank surprised me by donating parts from his own collection of vintage boats to help restore my father's vessel, which we planned to convert into a floating research platform. Lucy won first prize in her science fair with her project on community decision-making and ecosystem impact, her confidence and passion for environmental science growing stronger each day. A year after the fire, we launched the restored boat, now named SS Resilience, with the entire neighborhood gathered at the lakefront to celebrate. A small plaque affixed to the hull read, "From ashes we discovered truth." As Lucy eagerly demonstrated her water sampling techniques to a group of fascinated children, Hank stood beside me at the dock. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "sometimes it takes a fire to show who really cares about a community and its environment." I watched Lucy's joy as she navigated our restored vessel across the water, explaining ecosystem concepts to her new friends. "And sometimes," I replied, "from the ashes we build something even better than what was lost. That's the nature of science and life." The peaceful lake, now protected for generations to come, sparkled in the sunshine as families gathered along its shores, a community united by crisis and renewed by purpose. As the boat glided smoothly across the water, I reflected on the entire journey, from the fire that seemingly destroyed everything to discovering that true power lies in knowledge and united community action. Belinda wanted to use fire to intimidate me, but she didn't know that sometimes the very flames meant to destroy us forge the strongest version of ourselves. And if you're watching this video, remember, Never let anyone tell you that one person with knowledge and determination can't change an entire system, because you absolutely can.
QA Stories, where reality feels like fiction and fiction wishes it was this juicy. Hit that like before the next bombshell drops.